All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Page. I am Dan Boyer, aka Neon Super Shrimp, and it is September 11th, 2024. 23 years after the 9/11 uh, incident, attacks, whatever you want to call it. Um, so just kind of want to give a shout out to kind of, all the first responders and, important people that help take care of us in the background and and everything like that. So just shout out to them and just kind of a friendly reminder to hug your loved ones. You know, you just never know. Uh, but yeah, fun fact about me: 9/11 did help motivate me to join the military right after high school. It wasn't the only reason that I decided to join the army, but it was one of those reasons. But yeah, it was definitely one of those things. Oh, you know what I forgot? Give me just pushing stuff around here. Here we go. It's a little bit better. Now you can see the mess in the rest of my room here. All right. Come on, camera. There we go. Refocus. All right. Well, I'm rolling solo tonight, as you can kind of see, but I do have some things to talk about. Little little bit of Rangers baseball. We'll talk a little optimism, I think, on that topic, as well as some Cowboys. Uh, I don't know, evaluation of Week 1, and then uh, talk a little bit of college football as well. We will mostly just be taking it easy. I don't think I have too much to talk about, or any of it being like too horribly serious or anything like that. But should be a fun cast. Feel free to jump in the chat. Let me know what you think. Chime in on your opinions if you think I'm an idiot or whatever the case may be. But we will kick off first with a shout out to our one of our sponsors. Shout out to W. If you're looking for a superior energy drink to replace your inferior caffeinated beverages, W contains zero maltodextrin, zero fillers, zero artificial colors or dyes, and zero proprietary blends. The coffee fruit extracts the star of this beverage, helping you focus and energize without jitters or crash. Use code PEAK1 when you order W today and receive 10% off your order. I actually just got a new flavor of or a new tub. It's called Galaxy Grenade. It's really good. I really like this one. I like the last one I was having too was like I mean I think it was just called like Blue or Big Blue or something like that. But it was really good. Galaxy Grenade, kind of I think it's like a watermelon taste. But yeah, real good. So shout out to our partner W, Galaxy Grenade. I'm drinking tonight. I always forget to throw these logos up. Check out the Roscoe Fantasy Football Show on Tuesdays. His show is also up on YouTube if you want to go check that out. He was actually really good at plugging all his stuff, man. I was watching yesterday. Shout out to my buddy Ross, doing a good job. So, first thing let's talk about like some Rangers. They've actually been doing fairly well on a little bit of a little bit of a losing streak right now. We just had a 2-game series against the Diamondbacks where we dropped both, but we did have a 4-game series where we took 3 against the Angels, and then just before that was a 3-game series against the Yankees where we won 2 out of 3. Um, we're 70 and 76. We are 3.5 games, I believe, behind second place. Over the next, what I believe it's 17 games remaining. Um, It actually might be 16 games remaining because I may have counted the Diamondbacks game that was this afternoon. So it may be 16 games remaining. But out of the 16 games remaining, they have 2 series, 7 games total against Seattle. who is the second place team that we need to catch up to. So starting tomorrow, we kick off a 4-game series against Seattle. Then we have a 3-game series against Toronto. Then we have another 3-game series from September 20th to 22nd against Seattle. And then we finish with a 3-game series against the Athletics, and then another 3-game series against the Angels. And that's the end of the Ranger season. Now, with all of that being said, they should be able to win the majority of these games. And if they can manage to beat Seattle in these 2 series, we might be able to squeeze our way into the playoffs. Now, I don't necessarily think that that's like going to be like the greatest thing to happen to the Rangers or anything. I don't necessarily think that the Rangers are going to stand much of a chance in the playoffs. Seager's still out dealing with his hip injury, probably not coming back. But I believe I was just looking a little while ago, and DeGrom is supposed to pitch on Friday, and Scherzer is supposed to come back and pitch on Saturday. So ideally, we pull out a win tomorrow. I'm trying to look real quick to see who's supposed to pitch. Rocker. All right. Well, not a whole lot to go on there. It would certainly seem like Seattle is the favorite here, 2/3 favorite. So I mean, beating Seattle is really where this whole thing will be decided. If we can get the Rangers to just play and upset Seattle over those 2 series, I think they have a shot at like squeezing their way into the playoffs. But I don't necessarily see them, I don't know, making it past like that first round or anything. It's been such a rough season for the Rangers that even with like DeGrom and Scherzer coming back, I'm just not sure. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's crazy. With all the fall sports and everything going on, I feel like I've been like humbled at some point in my life or something like recently, that I've just been a little less optimistic about, like most of my teams. And it seems like after the All-Star break, it felt like the Rangers season was really kind of going down the drains. These last few weeks though, they managed to like string like just enough wins together and staying like just within reach of Seattle to possibly make a wild card spot, I guess. But like I'm saying, in order for that to happen, they have to come out on top in these games against Seattle. And I feel like you're also going to need Seattle to like lose some games along the way, and they're going to have to like win some games, especially with like I think Toronto is pretty highly ranked. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. No, maybe not. Nope. Okay, so Toronto should totally be beatable. So yeah, the way the season ends for the Rangers is really kind of in their own hands at this point. I'd definitely like to, I'd rather see them kind of get into the playoffs than not. I feel like that's kind of an obvious kind of statement for anybody talking about their favorite team or whatever. But I think the real reason is just because like coming off of a World Series and then like missing the playoffs completely the next year just does not feel like indicative of what this team can do. The unfortunate part being that we've like dealt with a number of injuries like all summer, and that's left us in this kind of dire position that we're in. But I will say, like on the upside, I can appreciate and I even like the fact that the Rangers are they hold their fate. like they hold their fate in their hands. Like I'm saying, like they can go out, they could win these games, they could beat Seattle in these 2 series, and they could manage to get into the playoffs. I don't expect to see them make a deep playoff run, but man, maybe they could surprise me. I don't necessarily think anybody expected them to make the playoffs, and play as well as they did last season. So, and I mean, one of the kind of coaching mentality things that I've always had that I like to keep is, like at the start of every game, it's tied, it's 0-0, and it's anybody's game, at the start. Obviously you play and you make decisions and possibly mistakes and things like that along the way, and you got to make plays and whatever. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm pretty impressed. It seems nice that that the Rangers will be able to kind of get themselves into a playoff position if they kind of want to, I guess is almost how I feel about it. But I think it'll be a little bit of a struggle anyway. Our bats haven't been like the hottest or anything. Our pitching hasn't necessarily been the best, but Scherzer and DeGrom coming back on Friday and Saturday will definitely give us a pretty good shot. So, yeah, Rangers, in my opinion, kind of turning it around. I feel like we were talking pretty negatively about them like all of August, just about pretty much since the All-Star break and up to this point. It's definitely felt like they just weren't really gonna make this kind of push or be able to make this kind of push, and it feels like, I guess, Seattle's managed to stay just within reach. And now with the way the schedule kind of tapers off for the end of the season, it seems to me that they've got a shot. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I'm excited for it makes it feel like the Rangers are a little more watchable now that it feels like they could possibly make the playoffs and everything. There's like more reason to watch them and root for them and cheer for them, rather than like when you're in like last place in your division like the Angels or something, and it's like as much as you enjoy the game and love your team and everything, it's like you just know you're not going to make the playoffs. These games are exhibitionary more or less, because they just don't mean anything really for you. So it's nice that the Rangers are at least still in a fighting position. So we'll see what happens over the next really like it's just 2.5 weeks, 17 games, 16 games, I think. So yeah, we'll see. Pretty exciting though. I love September and October baseball. Can't wait. So we'll shout out to our next partner sponsor. Man, I wish I would stop betting with my gut and start betting with Betalytics. The Betalytics dashboards allow you to quickly identify the top graded best bets and hottest. I guess my thing is wrong. It messed up here. Betalytics uses AI machines to learn algorithms and create accurate game simulations, player prop projections, betting line evaluations, and best bet recommendations. If you visit Betalytics.com and use promo code PEAK1, you'll receive 25% off when you sign up today. And the reason I say I need to start using Betalytics more and stop betting with my gut, I made this exact same mistake last season, and it was week 1. I'll never forget it. I was actually hanging out with Ashton and Ross at our local B-Dubs, Buffalo Wild Wings, and the parlay bets that I had made that night had I had Aaron Rodgers, I think throwing like 2 touchdowns, or it was like over 1.5, and then I had the Jets kicker, I'm drawing blank on his name now, but I had the Jets kicker kicking, I think I needed him to get like 7 fantasy points or something like that, right? And he was literally, I think he was at like 6, and the over under was 6.5, and I needed him to kick like one extra point, right? I needed one extra point. And not only did Aaron Rodgers snap his Achilles in that fourth play of that game, but uh the game ended up going into overtime. And so it was like, even if the Jets managed to like score a touchdown and like win the game, I was not going to get the point out of Greg Zuerlein, right? Yeah, I was not going to get the point out of Greg Zuerlein because he wasn't going to kick that extra point. He wasn't going to kick that PAT. So I was just never going to get that point. And for this parlay that I did this week, I was so mad because I had taken one of the legs that was on sale. It was St. Brown to get over under 70 and a half. I took the over, and he obviously got 13 yards in week one. And then I had Greg Zuerlein to just kick 2 field goals. I just needed him to kick 2 field goals. I figured the Giants would probably do that. Like, Aaron Rodgers would get him like down close into the red zone or something, and they would like fizzle out or something, kick a few field goals. And damn it, if the Jets didn't kick a single field goal that entire game, which was insane to me. It was like because honestly, it was like they either couldn't move the ball at all, or they moved it all the way and got in the end zone, whatever. And it was so maddening because and then by the time it's like later in the game is like barely within reach for the Jets, and they're obviously they're they score touchdowns, and they're going for 2 to try and close the point gap. So it's like, I get it, but like, damn it, it just man, so frustrating. Yeah, so my 8-leg parlay, my maxed out parlay, missed by those 2 legs. I was pretty mad. It was going to be a big win, and it just barely missed, I feel like. So don't bet with your gut, bet with Betalytics. Use promo code Peak1 and receive 25% off today when you sign up. So shout out to Betalytics. Probably would have helped me win. Should have used them. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I got a whiny dog back here, so I'm gonna go take care of that just real quick, and I will BRB. All right, easy peasy, and I'm back. All right, kind of wanted to talk about the Cowboys this week. I feel like the big news that obviously happened right before the game, Dak Prescott got his contract, 4 years, $240 million, $231 million guaranteed. Now the highest payer per year in the NFL, averaging about $60 million a year. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, I feel like anybody that knows me on this show and has been watching me talk Cowboys and whatever, like, I've just never been a big Dak Prescott fan. I do not feel like he's worth this money. I do not feel like he's earned it. His resume is against him in this, in my opinion. I definitely thought that at the very least, they should have waited until about mid-season and seen if Dak Prescott managed to take the Cowboys to like 6-0 or something, 8-0, and give him his contract then, because he's, like, he's doing something amazing or whatever. But like, to give him the contract at 11 a.m. before his 3:30 game was kind of insane to me. The upside, the silver lining, because basically what I hear from a lot of people, and I understand, is like, at least the Cowboys have now secured their quarterback and Dak Prescott. I can also understand that, like, what are the Cowboys without Dak Prescott? What would they do without him? Like, what do you do if they lose Dak Prescott? Like, where are you, like, as an offense? I don't think Trey Lance is going to be the guy to step up. Well, obviously he's not. They released him. Cooper. The Cowboys just don't have a backup plan for like losing Dak Prescott right now. And I think ultimately because of that, it put Dak in an incredible position coming off of a career season that he just had last year. I guess I'm not necessarily surprised that he got paid. I'm just frustrated that he hasn't earned that paycheck. He hasn't earned like the right, I guess, to be like the highest paid player, period, in the NFL per year. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. It just seems like so much money for a guy that's 2-5 in the playoffs. I want results, and I hope this contract, I don't know, gives Dak whatever it is he needs mentally to like finally make it happen. I feel like we've been saying for like at least 5 years now, if not the full 8 years that Dak Prescott's been the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, that like this team is primed to win a Super Bowl. And every time we say it, we can't get past the first round. And so I don't understand why you continue to make Dak Prescott your highest paid player and, you know, the guy that I guess you value the most, at least financially, money-wise, you know, because I don't know, man. I don't understand. And I don't think I ever will. Good for Dak. He got paid, even though it's not about the money, whatever. It's pretty obviously about the money for him, but yeah, I don't know, man. It just, I'm glad the Cowboys have secured their quarterback. We'll see how these next like 4 years go. There's also a part of me that's hopeful that like if something, I don't know, maybe something could happen, something could change. The Cowboys could end up drafting a quarterback, you know, in the next year or two or something, and you know, let Dak go after these 4 years. Trade him. I don't know. I mean, there's a million things that could happen in the NFL every day. Well, I'm sure he still has the no trade clause. Now that I'm saying it out loud and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's also what frustrates me the most about this, is because now I know that like at least our next 4 years is Dak Prescott. That's the life we're living now as Cowboys fans. That's where we are. It's just how it's going to be. A little bit of credit to Dak Prescott. Not a bad game in week 1 against the Browns. 19 for 32, just under 60% completion rating. Like not his best night as far as completion rating, but 179 yards for a touchdown. You know, again, not like, you know, record-breaking numbers or anything, but not a bad night. Zeke, 10 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. He actually looked better than I was anticipating. I was honestly, like, as I started seeing him carry the ball a few more times, I was like, man, like, I almost wish I would have put him on my fantasy team. He looked a lot better than I was anticipating. So Lamb, 5 receptions, 61 yards. No touchdown. But, you know, again, not like a bad night. But, you know, when Dak is kept to 179 yards, you know, I don't expect CD's numbers to be, through the roof either. I feel like that's kind of basic math, you know, like easy. The defensive side of the ball though was crazy good. Shout out to the Cowboys. Oh, I'm dropping his name already. Anybody in the chat or whatever want to remind me of the Cowboys defensive coordinator's name? But he did a great job. We had 6 sacks, 2 by Kendricks, 2 by Lawrence. Kendricks also had an interception, 2 total interceptions for the Cowboys, Diggs and Kendricks, and then the kickoff return for a touchdown by Turpin, which, you know, I feel like really kind of helped put the game away for the Cowboys. But just, you know, really good game by the Cowboys, win 33-17. But the thing that I feel like I want to say, like, first and foremost is like, this was the Browns. This was Cleveland. We didn't like go in and like beat Kansas City week 1 in Kansas City or something like that. Like we didn't play week 1 against the Eagles or one of the top like offenses or anything like that. We had a good game. I think Dak's numbers could obviously, be better. Our defensive showing was, fantastic in my opinion, but I think it's important to kind of, excuse me, to kind of understand that like this was against the Browns. It wasn't against, a stellar NFL team. It was against the Browns, a pretty, I'd say like mediocre team. They're definitely not like the worst. They're not the Giants or Carolina right now, but I think it's important to kind of, at least I don't necessarily want to say like taper expectations, but I do want to say like I think it's important to like notice and understand like who that first game was. You know what I mean? It's kind of the same way. Like I'll talk a little bit about this too when we get into some of the college football matchups. But it's like, that first week or 2 weeks of college football, a lot of the like top 10 teams tend to play like unranked teams, like Rice and Tulane and Long Island. TCU just played Long Island, and it's like those are like, in my opinion, like those are great tune-up games, and they're good for playing that first week and everything, and to test your abilities and see where you're at kind of as a group and as a team. But it's also important to understand that it's like when you go into those games and you play against those like easier teams and stuff, like you're supposed to win, and I feel like you almost judge the game based on like by how much did you win or like how easy you won. And while this game like went off well for the Cowboys and they looked good, I think it's important to understand that like when the Cowboys go to face a more potent offense, I think that's going to be a more valid test of where we are as a team. And I'm going to say the same thing about our offense. When our offense manages to go and face off against, a more formidable defense, that's going to be a much better test of where we are offensively. And, I think we've got the tools. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to succeed. But I guess there's also been like a lot of shroud and mystery, I guess, surrounding the Cowboys as they've like done very little over the offseason, the contract struggles with players through the preseason. I think there's still a fair amount of building to do here, and we'll see if McCarthy can manage to kind of get the team chemistry going again with these guys and get us on a roll. Next week, New Orleans comes here to Dallas. After the showing that like Derek Carr kind of had with that offense, I think we'll have a better test for our defense this week, especially considering that like CJ Stroud did not look like an NFL quarterback this last week. Cowboys absolutely had him just frazzled in that backfield. He looked worse than he's ever looked. And actually, I heard, I want to say it might like shout out Barstool Sports, but I heard one of them basically say that like he played football so badly it made him seem like a good person, and he's a terrible person. And I thought that was hilarious because honestly, he played so badly in that game. There's just like I don't know if honestly, if you have CJ Stroud on your fantasy football team, my advice is obviously to drop him. That's terrible. I would probably take Daniel Jones right now over CJ Stroud, which is insane to say, but he looked absolutely terrible. And I don't necessarily think it was because the Cowboys defense looked so spectacular. Not that they looked bad. They were playing a great game, but CJ Stroud looked like he did not belong in that backfield at all. So, just more reason for me to say that like it feels like, as good as this win was for the Cowboys against the Browns, it's important to understand where we were and who we were playing, as far as like, trying to thump our chest over how great this win was. Next week, I think, will be a better test, especially after New Orleans' game last week against, I think it was New England or something. I'm not sure. Yeah. Um, One thing I did kind of want to talk about that made like the news and stuff was the whole Tyreek Hill incident, him getting arrested on his way into the stadium, I guess. A lot of like wrongs on both sides. I'll basically point out that, like, it was kind of, so I guess the stop was initiated because Tyreek Hill was speeding. I did see in the video that they called him out for like not wearing his seatbelt. And I did also see that Miami PD had released a statement saying that he also didn't have a license. All, like ticketable offenses and whatever. I would also argue that, you pull him over for the speeding, you find out he doesn't have a license, you could just have his car towed and whatever. But as for like dragging him out of the car, putting him on the ground and cuffing him like within 60 seconds of, initiating the traffic stop, felt absolutely ridiculous. I hope those officers are held accountable, because that definitely just felt like an abuse of power. Rolling up your window during a traffic stop is not illegal. In fact, I have some police officer friends and stuff. We happen to like kind of reach out to one who's, a pretty well seasoned veteran, and he openly told us, like, at least here in Texas, and I assume it kind of has to be a little bit the same in Miami, but it's like, yeah, with like the heat and everything here in Texas, you are definitely allowed to like roll your window up, and you don't, as far as I know, you don't even have to roll your window all the way down to interact with the police officer, as long as you're able to like hand them your identification or your license or whatever it is, and the two of you are able to like communicate clearly. I don't see what the issue is. But it definitely felt like there was a bit of a power dynamic at play there that, really shouldn't have been. It didn't seem like Tyreek Hill was, being like rude or like resisting in any type of way. But I mean, they definitely like threw him around, and then like when the officer kind of jumped him from behind and like, threw him on the ground, like made him sit down or whatever. It was ridiculous. It was all like way over the top. It was unnecessary. It was uncalled for. And, honestly, like I'm really just glad to hear that like nothing actually happened to Tyreek Hill. I'm not trying to like be overly dramatic here. I don't necessarily think like his life was in danger, but I am going to argue that, like, considering that he's had like knee surgery, and he even kind of said in his interviews and stuff, like his body's a little beat up, like he's a little rough, he plays football for a living in the NFL, and these guys are basically going through like small car crashes every time they get hit and tackled and stuff. So, and the fact that he like just had knee surgery and things like that, and they're like throwing him on the ground, like in the middle of traffic and everything too. It was like, it just seemed ridiculous. And like, heaven forbid something would have happened where like maybe they would have like hip tossed him or sweep the leg or something, and they like messed up his knee. And then, suddenly he's like out for the season because he, gets some sort of knee injury or whatever. So like, yeah, ultimately I'm like glad nothing happened as far as, that's concerned. But I definitely hope like the police officers are kind of held accountable for this, because it felt unnecessary, and it felt over the top. It just, like I can even understand, like he, if he was speeding and whatever, I'm sure it seems to me like he was, maybe only doing like 5 or 10 over, trying to get in, get to the stadium and whatever. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that as well. I'm sure there will be more news about it in the coming weeks, but it just didn't necessarily feel like he was doing anything like worth all of that struggle and over the topness. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about as far as football was just kind of like this week's coming games, Buffalo and Miami. Shout out to Tyreek Hill again, playing tomorrow night in Miami. Hopefully he doesn't get arrested again. Man, honestly, one thing I do want to say about it too, shout out to him for at least having like a little bit of a sense of humor about it. And his touchdown celebration was him like being cuffed and arrested in the end zone. I thought that was really funny. So shout out to him for that one. But yeah, so fun game coming. Buffalo against Miami. I'm always a fan of this game, especially with the two offenses the way they are. Bill's really kind of struggling right now and going into this season, but it feels like the last few years Josh Allen's managed to kind of figure it out and put it together. So they had a pretty good showing last week against the Cardinals in that win. So fun game on Thursday. I love the division rivalries too. They always just they usually play out to be a little more fun. So don't forget to check out Betalytics and get your bets in for the Thursday night game. Then Dallas plays at noon. New Orleans coming out here to Dallas. Just kind of looking over the games real quick, see if there's any other good, exciting matchups that I'd be like, real excited to see. Cincinnati and Kansas City, I feel like is always a pretty good matchup as well. A little bit of AFC rivalry there. Joe Cool coming into Kansas City and trying to win is always a real tough one. I believe he's got a losing record though against Kansas City. I can't quite remember. I might also be thinking about the Bills against Kansas City, but if I'm being honest, I think probably the majority of teams probably have losing records against Kansas City. I mean, they're so dominant the last few years, and it's kind of hard not to root for them at least a little bit to go win a third one in a row just to see it. So yeah. Then what's the Monday matchup? Then Monday night, Atlanta at Philadelphia. That one's probably going to be an absolute beating. Yeah, the Lions got Philadelphia -6.5. So, to be honest, I'd probably even take that bet. I think Philadelphia wins that game by more than a touchdown. So, good games coming up this week. We will definitely be watching the Cowboys game at noon and all the nightly games, but I'm actually really excited about that Thursday night game, Buffalo at Miami. That'll be a really good one. And I think I've got a few. I don't think I have any Buffalo players now that I'm thinking about it on my fantasy football teams, but I do have Saquon Barkley in a couple of leagues, and I have high expectations for that young man. After everything that happened with him and the New York Giants, I honestly can't stop laughing after seeing that Hard Knocks about the Giants in the offseason and their, handling of the whole Saquon Barkley contract. Just it makes me laugh so hard because it was such a bad call. It was such a bad decision by the Giants GM to think that like Saquon wasn't gonna get the top dollar that he was like kind of asking for. For those that don't know and whatever, Saquon was asking for like 12.5 million from the Giants. The Giants offered him like 11.5, and they tried to give him a hard time about making a big deal over this like final $1 million, and basically trying to like guilt him into signing the lesser amount contract, telling him that like if you want to be a Giant for life, you'll sign this contract, or like we don't know why you're making such a big deal over this like last $1 million, which I think is ridiculous when you're talking about like an NFL team getting mad at a player over $1 million, and it's like you've got the $1 million. And then finally, sorry, I got ice in my drink. And then the big thing that happened that I thought was even more insane was the fact that not only before that, so then the Giants like tell Saquon like, you know what, Go ahead and test the market, see what's out there, and like see who will pay you. Almost like laughing at him behind his back, as if like and basically saying to each other like, there's no way anyone in the league is going to pay him $12.5 million, as if he's not like one of the top 3 running backs in the league, as if he's not like worth that money. And then obviously he goes out and he finds it, he gets it. And the crazier part about it, it's Philadelphia, which is probably the one team that he would actually like jump at the chance of going to rejoin because he's from Philadelphia. And then the crazier part, the thing about the story that got me the most was the fact that the Giants then found out that the cap space for the year was actually like 10 or 11 million dollars more than they were anticipating. And I was like, man, if that happened, you should have taken $1 million of that extra $10 million that you got for the year and immediately given it to Saquon and been like, here's the contract, like, here's what you asked for. Come home, let's get to work. Like, let's go win some football games. And instead they were just like, well, let's see what he can get out there, And then the Giants offer him, like, I think it's like, I can't remember if it's 12.35 or 12.85 a year, and like and like a 3-year contract or whatever. But it was, what he wanted. They gave him, the guaranteed money and everything. And I could not believe that the Giants balked at such an opportunity, because like, not like at first, like maybe at first you complain about the fact that like you don't quite have the money because Daniel Jones is eating up so much of your cap space. But the fact that like then you find out that your cap space is an extra $10 million and you're not willing to take 1 million of that to pay Saquon, to help fill in that gap and bring him home. And instead you try to like guilt trip him and like gaslight him into thinking that like he's the problem. He's the reason this deal isn't getting done. It's not you like disrespecting him or not valuing his contribution to the team, or what he's actually worth across the market. Instead you're like, oh, like if he really wanted to be a Giant, he would take the $1 million pay cut. It's like, no, man, like you have the money, you have the means, make it happen, figure it out, put it together. And instead you just like, you let him walk. And on top of that, not only did you like let him walk by like laughing at him behind his back, thinking that no one was going to pay him the amount of money that he's looking for, but then he walks out the door and he goes right down the road to your rival, your division rival, and it's like, then he goes off for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. And of course, every Giants fan is upset. They're mad about it because you let this guy walk out the door. Now, I'm not saying that he would have had the same performance with the Giants. I can't imagine that he would have had 100 yards and 3 touchdowns if he was running with the Giants. Maybe that O-line is a little bit better, but I don't see that being the case. He may have had more like check down passes from Daniel Jones, which may have managed to help Daniel Jones look a little bit better last week. But I just, the position that the Giants are in, I don't necessarily think he was going to make that any better. So good for him in that he got out of a bad situation and managed to find himself now in a very good situation, because I think that Philadelphia offense is potent, and Saquon Barkley only adds to that potency, only adds to that value of their offense. And so, and I think his performance last week, speaks enough to that anyway. So, yeah, plenty going on around the NFL. I'm super excited. Week 1's finally kicked off. Fantasy football's in full swing. Like I kind of plugged earlier, check out the Roscoe Fantasy Football Show on Tuesday nights. Get a little help with like your ad drops, your waiver wire stuff. He talks about, the players that suck and the players that, don't, or expectations and that kind of thing. So good time. Check them out Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Just before I kind of jump into some college football talk here, we will plug our kind of final sponsor here. The Dapper Dog Academy is a standout Dog Training Academy located in Cleburne, Texas. Owner-trainer Korri Bennett has nearly 10 years experience helping your canine companions become the best version of themselves. With personalized training programs tailored to fit your pup's unique personality and needs, Korri's committed to helping your best friends reach their full potential. So reach out to Korri and the Dapper Dog Academy on Facebook today. I'm extra close to that one too. We take care of the dogs ourselves. I help out a little bit, mostly with just kind of like kennel tech stuff. I help take care of the dogs, feed them, potty them, basic stuff. I might help Korri walk them occasionally and that kind of thing. But she is a fantastic trainer, and she can definitely help out anybody with new puppies. Are actually kind of her specialty, puppies and small dog training. But she also does some of the specialty stuff, and we've also done like some dock diving and competition stuff. So definitely check her out on Facebook. She likes to post pictures and videos and stuff of some of our client dogs that come through, and yeah, good time. But great dog trainer. And if you're looking to just kind of settle your dog down a little bit, Korri's great at that. Korri's great at that. She's the best. All right, so some of the college football stuff that I wanted to talk about, really the main one that I was kind of looking at, the coaches poll rankings have Texas at number 3, although the AP poll rankings rank Texas at number 2. So AP put Texas over Oklahoma at number 2, or sorry, Ohio at number 2, and then Ohio at number 3. The coaches poll, though, left Ohio number 2, Texas number 3. Top 5, the exact same. But between the two standings or whatever. Sorry, I'm also trying to like pull it up here. Here we go. Yeah, so Georgia straight off number 1. Then you have Texas or Ohio State, depending on which of the two polls we're looking at. Alabama and Ole Miss. Alabama doing pretty good. I think they're probably appropriately ranked there. Ole Miss also kind of off to a decent start. But one of those things that I was kind of thinking about, it feels like those first 2 weeks of games are usually not the hardest tests for these higher ranked teams in the AP and coaches poll and that kind of thing. Texas, having gone up against the the reigning champs, Michigan, and just absolutely trouncing them in that game, I think pretty much kind of proves that they're at the very least number 2. I think. I'm not sure that any of the other teams have really had like the same quality of matchup. I don't feel like the level of difficulty in the matchup so far have been that. We're definitely going to see more of that as we go through the season. But as far as it's like concerned right now, and you have the rankings change every week after on Sunday after all the games are played on Saturday. I don't really see how or why you would rank Texas lower than number 2 right now. Not that Ohio State necessarily like looks bad. They've been playing just fine, but I just don't feel like these first 2 games have necessarily been the same caliber that Texas went through, especially in the last week's game against Michigan. And I don't feel like they've necessarily like dominated their games as much as Texas has managed to dominate these first 2 games, especially last week against Michigan. So, and you have to remember too that they went to Michigan. They went into the big house and they just blew the doors off of Blue. So, rough game for the Maize and Blue. I'm pretty psyched for the Longhorns though. I was saying, going into the season and everything, I think the Longhorns have probably the best shot at winning a national championship this year, which I would be super psyched to see. Obviously, there's plenty of season to be played. we'll see what happens when Texas goes up against some better teams, because I mean, this week they're going up against UTSA, then UL Monroe, but we got. Well, I guess really our first big test is going to be the Red River rivalry against the Oklahoma Sooners on October 12th, which I'm such a huge fan of that game. One of the best rivalry games in college football. Always watch it. Usually meet up with the friends. I was actually even talking to Kenny about it on, I believe it was the Gambler stream that I do on Saturdays. Shout out if you want to check that out. Watch me play a little poker, baccarat, some other fun games that are on stake.us, trying to turn one stake coin into a Bitcoin. But just kind of a fun Saturday night thing, just hanging out, doing some gambling. But we were talking about how I lost my train of thought. We were talking about how the Red River rivalry is one of the greatest rivalries, but I was telling him how the game always has to be played pretty early in the day. It actually looks like this one's at 2:30. It's oftentimes at like 11 a.m. noon time, just because the turnout for the game is so enormous, and the state fair here in Texas is already kind of in swing at that point. It's usually been going on for about a week or two at that point. And so most people, the majority of people go, and the Cotton Bowl is literally on one side of the parking lot and the state fairgrounds is like on the other. And so people usually go to the Red River rivalry. They tailgate, up and, from like 9 a.m., 8, 9, 10 in the morning. And then they tailgate until, the game, usually at like 11 or noon. I guess this one's at 2:30. And then, you go into the game, you drink more, you watch the game. The rivalry is huge. It's obviously full of, Texas and Oklahoma fans. Plenty of, back and forth between the fans and the players. So it gets pretty rowdy. And then immediately following the game, the majority of the people leave the stadium and go right across the parking lot to the Texas State Fair and have fun there. I personally have never done that. I've never even gotten to go to the Red River shootout, or Red River rivalry, sorry. I've always wanted to go, but I've definitely been told by friends and stuff that have gone and have done that kind of experience, that it's rough, because it is shoulder to shoulder, both in the stadium and in the state fairgrounds. It's just there are so many people, and everybody's just trying to move and go places and do all the same stuff. And so I would love to go one of these days. That's kind of the goal / dream, is go do that. I'm not sure if I would go to the state fair right afterwards. I'd probably go to the game and probably leave afterwards. But yeah, definitely one of those college rivalry experiences that's probably one of the biggest in the nation. Shout out, mention in the comments if you have any, personal, college rivalry favorites. I think the Alabama Auburn game is also a really good one. The Iron Bowl, I think it is. That's also kind of top of my list. I also I used to really love watching the rivalry game between the Longhorns and A&M. It used to always be their last game of the season, and I believe they're bringing that back this year. Yep, this year. Oh, no kidding. That game's actually the day after my birthday, November 30th. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I used to always love the A&M game as the last game for the Longhorns and the Aggies. But yeah, that's about all I had for Texas. I did want to talk about Notre Dame just a little bit. They dropped from number 5 to number 18, 13 places, following the loss to unranked Northern Illinois after beating Texas A&M 23-13. Man, sometimes these games happen, and honestly, it just kind of, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna say like it breaks my heart a little bit just because I feel like every year I'm always kind of like rooting for Notre Dame to do something and to chase a national championship. I feel like I've been saying for a little bit that until this kind of playoff bracket has happened now for college football and the national championship, I don't think Notre Dame's had a better chance at trying to win a national championship. I don't necessarily see how they would have managed to do it. Like through the 90s or the early 2000s and that kind of thing. Kenny, I want to say Kenny and I might have been talking about it on Saturday on the Gambler. I want to say he said the last time they won a national championship was like the 80s or something like that. I thought it was before that. It very well could be. I haven't even looked it up. But like I don't know. I've just always kind of like been rooting for him. I feel like it might even be associated with like my love for the movie Rudy. So like stupid reason really, but like I don't know, I've always kind of like been like secretly cheering on the Irish to do something in college football and kind of get back into those glory days of winning a national championship, or at least being like a contender for the national championship, and just having that really solid football team with the gold helmets and the navy blue. And then they go and do something like this. It's like they're ranked as high as number 5, and they trounce A&M week 1 and have this great start for the season, and then they go face Northern Illinois, an unranked, just what, like, I'm not even sure if they're Division 1. I think they're probably Division 2. But yeah, it's a huge setback. The upside here is there's obviously like a lot of football to be played. There could be plenty of upsets. I'm anticipating seeing it probably at least half of the 12 that make it to the bracket at the end of the season. I'm expecting at least half of them to have at least one loss. The guys in like 11th and 12th place might even have multiple losses. And kind of squeeze in to the playoff bracket, like that way. I do think that kind of like the best kind of position to really be in is obviously going to be like, I think it's 1 and 2 get like bye weeks or something. If you're like in the 5-6 spot, you probably get pretty good matchups going into the playoffs and stuff. And you're going to be kind of the power favorite in those matchups. So I don't think this is like the end of the world. I think the silver lining here is that like Notre Dame would still have a possible chance at making a run at the national championship simply by just making it into the playoff bracket at the end of the season. But this is I don't know. It feels ominous, it does not feel good, like I don't even know how to describe it. It's such an odd loss. Like it was so unexpected, I guess, that I was just not anticipating Notre Dame to lose to Northern Illinois of all opponents, it just so they're definitely going to have to throttle down, I think, from here on out. It just, man, it's rough, playing Purdue on Saturday, I believe it is, which is always kind of a cool little interstate rivalry. Indiana schools, Purdue and Notre Dame. That'll be a pretty good one. Just looking at Notre Dame's schedule here real quick, and they don't necessarily have like a lot of ranked opponents here. They've got Louisville in a few weeks, and they close out against number 11 USC. But for the most part, not a lot of really tough games in here. They do play Florida State early November and Virginia a week after that. But both of them unranked right now. Florida State just off to that terrible start, and so I almost don't anticipate them beating anyone the way their season just kind of went off the rails week 1 or week 0 really. So we'll see what goes on there. I kind of mentioned it a little bit. I caught the TCU game. They played Long Island. Beat them up. Honestly, I'm not even sure what the score was. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, did I push a button? Oh, yeah, I guess I did, huh? That's funny. Yeah, 45-0. That's what I thought it was. I knew it was a shutout, but I didn't want to say it before I confirmed. But yeah, TCU not looking so bad. They're not ranked or anything. I don't anticipate that they will be anytime too soon. Let me see if I can look them up real quick. Just see their schedule here a little bit. Yeah, a couple of easier games. Playing UCF this week. Saturday night, which I think I had that written down here. Yeah, Saturday night at 6:30, playing UCF, and then next week will be SMU, and then a conference game against Kansas. So, yeah, just looking at their schedule, not like the toughest schedule. Got a couple of ranked matchups coming, like next month and in November, it looks like. But yeah, I don't know if I anticipate TCU being able to, play well enough that they're going to get ranked high enough to make a shot at the playoffs. It'd be pretty cool if they did. But if I'm being truthful, just a couple of years ago when they beat Michigan in that first round and then made it to the final to play Georgia, as exciting as that was, and as much as I kind of liked rubbing it in the face of some of my Michigan family members and things like that, TCU did not belong in that national championship, and I almost would have rathered to see Michigan play Georgia. I think Georgia probably still would have won that game. Even with didn't Michigan beat Georgia last year for the championship, I think. So, but I mean, it was still a lot of fun to see TCU like make it that far and kind of defy the odds a little bit in the playoff bracket. But I'm also going to argue too that the 12-man bracket for college football that's starting this year, I think is going to make the national championship just a little more exciting. It definitely leaves you like a potential result of kind of a Cinderella story. You could definitely end up with number 12 winning it all, just the underdog, having some great games and managing to win a national championship. I'm sure it's like extremely unlikely, especially with like usually how much more dominant the top 5 ranked teams are versus say like a number 11 or number 12 team. But like I kind of said earlier, at the start of every game, scores 0-0, it's tied. It's anybody's game. You go out there, you do what you got to do. You perform, you do all the little things right. You give yourself a chance and go out there and win a game. So I think this setup makes for a much more exciting kind of playoff final, whatever, leading up to the national championship. I definitely kind of prefer it over just kind of like AP polls, picking like number 1 and number 2, and we just send them to the bowl games kind of thing. Especially when there's always going to be so much like difference of opinion between like why one team is ranked number 2 and another team is ranked number 3, kind of like what we were just talking about with Texas and Ohio State. I think Texas should be ranked higher than Ohio State. I can understand some arguments that you might make as far as like Ohio State hasn't necessarily done anything to be like demoted or to like lose ranking or anything like that. But I'm going to argue that like Texas has played so well, and in fact, like, seem better, at least, on the scoreboards and everything, that they should be considered better than Ohio State. So, I mean, you're always going to have those opinions and those arguments that are going to go back and forth, which make for a great bar conversation. Like you have a couple of beers and you debate who should be ranked where and why. But ultimately, it's like when you're having that conversation and that debate, and it results in the two teams being chosen to go to a national championship game, it just feels a little more loaded versus like I don't know, I guess the room for error that's left when you have kind of a 12-man bracket, and it's like as long as kind of the best 12 get put in, it almost doesn't necessarily matter if they're ranked 2 or 3. Although, I mean, you do get the bye week for being 1 and 2, so there's a little bit of difference there, but at least you still make the playoffs in that kind of situation. But yeah, final kind of thing I had here, just shouting out a few games coming up this week. Arizona versus Kansas State, Big 12 game, I believe, if I remember correctly. That's Friday night at 7 p.m. Texas versus UTSA. We'll see what happens there. I actually lived real close to UTSA. Went to a few games when I was living down there, and hanging out with like Wounded Warrior Project and a lot of other soldiers and that kind of thing. So I got to hang out at like some UTSA games and things like that. Really cool too, because they I'm wondering if they still do, because I think they might have like their own stadium now, but they used to play at the Alamo Dome, if I remember correctly. So that was always really cool. TCU versus UCF, also Saturday. That one's at 6:30. Texas UTSA is at 6 p.m. And then Colorado versus Colorado State, I kind of put here on my list just as like that'll be an interesting game, like a fun rivalry game. And then I think it's going to be like another. We'll see what kind of test it turns into for Colorado. I thought Shedeur Sanders last week just looked, I don't know, not himself. He didn't look good at all against Nebraska. I don't know if it was like the speed of that defense just absolutely frazzling him or what it was, but like he was not playing well, not making good decisions. Just honestly, just a really, really rough game for Shedeur Sanders. And then, I mean, I think Kenny and I were having this conversation on Saturday as well, just kind of talking about, Colorado. I mean, I think Colorado's got like more talent on it than people probably think. They also had like the most number of transfers in the offseason to Colorado. I'm sure that's like 99% because of Deion Sanders. Kids want to play for Deion Sanders, and I get it, like Showtime, the guy knows people, he knows football, he's a good coach. I worry about his loyalty to Colorado and versus like his loyalty to his son and to Travis Hunter and to like kind of getting them to the NFL. I will not be surprised if Deion Sanders absolutely leaves Colorado just kind of holding the bag when his son leaves for the NFL. I don't think that's going to surprise me at all. It won't surprise me one bit. And I think it's just because Deion's, more concerned with like, his son going out there and like getting stats, getting, like camera time, showtime, primetime games, and being able to kind of not, because I mean, you don't necessarily have to play for like the greatest team. You don't necessarily have to win a national championship to like get drafted into the NFL and then like kind of get developed from the college to pro player. I personally don't know if Shedeur Sanders will actually be a successful player in the NFL. Kenny and I were kind of talking about how there's probably a good chance that if Shedeur Sanders does go to the NFL, they might move him around to a couple of positions. There's a good chance that he doesn't play quarterback. I think the same thing will probably happen with Travis Hunter. I also think that Travis Hunter should just pick a position, either, keep playing defense or, stay a receiver, one or the other. I don't necessarily think he's gonna be as successful two-way player as he hopes he's gonna be, and that's mostly just because of the position that uh, Colorado is in. I don't necessarily think he's gonna. He had mentioned in kind of the preseason before the season started that he wanted to be the first two-way player to win the Heisman, and I don't see that happening. At the very least, because he's at Colorado, I just don't see that happening. I think he can be a really good player, and he'll definitely be like on everyone's draft board as far as the NFL is concerned. He's a very talented athlete, and it definitely seems like he's got an understanding for the game. I'd almost argue more so than Shedeur Sanders, but we'll see what happens there. Um, I would imagine at minimum the goal for Colorado and for Deion Sanders would be to win more games this year than they did last year. And I'm not even sure if I don't think Colorado made it to a bowl game. I think they just missed out on a bowl game last year. They only had 5 wins. Um, and 3 came in the first 3 weeks of the season. So uh I mean, I have to imagine at minimum that's their goal is to get 6 wins, um, possibly even a bowl bid. But after that game against Nebraska and everything, Colorado just they did not look good, and I mean I guess it's funny to say, I guess, because after like seeing Colorado 2 years ago, they were awful. They had and got 1 win. And Dion comes in, he brings his son, he brings Travis Hunter, and he cuts a bunch of guys and brings in his people and all that stuff. But they ended up looking a lot better than they did the year prior. Now they come into this season, and I'm not sure that they look even as good as they looked last year, at least initially. And it feels like as kind of the game and the weeks continue, obviously we'll get to see more of that. But that week 1 win, I can't quite remember who it was against, but it was a close game. And then week 2, they had no answers offensively for Nebraska's defense. So it'll be one of those things to definitely keep an eye on as we move forward through the weeks. And I personally wouldn't be too surprised to see Shedeur Sanders' NFL stock decline over time. I'm not sure if he can play another season after this or not. And so I think whether if he can play again next season, it'll all kind of depend on how this season goes, especially for him statistically. So I would keep an eye on that. I think it's going to be one of those stories that's definitely going to be talked about quite a bit. People are already talking about Dion and his son, and one of the things I had kind of noticed, because people have been talking about Dion's more concerned about getting like attention and time for his son than he is worried about necessarily like building the Colorado program into like a successful football program and moving them into at least a little bit of football greatness over the next couple of years. It just seems like his loyalty is more to his son, and I couldn't help but feel like that's got to be at least a little bit true, because in the kind of pregame interview that they had with Primetime coming off the bus, I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I want to say it was something about like what's your answer defensively for this Nebraska offense. And he said something like, we got to put pressure on that quarterback. And then he was like, right, son. And his son was like standing right next to him the entire time he's doing this interview. It turns out he actually had his arm like around his son. And I couldn't really tell, like you could see the shoulder of his son. And then they like zoomed out a little bit after he was like, right, son. And his son was right there. And I was like, that was a weird time to like include your son in that conversation, considering that question was about defense and your son plays quarterback, so and I'm pretty sure it was Shedeur, it wasn't I can't remember his other son's name, who like just broke his arm in the game last week, making a tackle. But yeah, anyway, super exciting, man. I love football, and honestly, it feels good too, just because the potential for the turnout for college football's first 12-man playoff bracket for the national championship feels like it's going to be an exciting one. It feels like, we're going to have some teams like have some weird losses, or even some close tough games that result in losses that still could potentially leave them ranked, number 10, number 11 or something, where they could still squeeze into the playoffs. I genuinely think there's going to be probably at least like a handful of teams that make the bracket with at least like one loss, if not, one or two teams that make it, into that 11, 12 spot with multiple losses. So I personally think that just makes for like a more exciting playoff bracket. I think there'll also be like some argument too if it's like, I don't know, say something crazy happens where like Alabama manages to get 2 losses, but they get like the 12 spot over a team or somebody that has 1 loss or something like that. And then there's always going to be the conversation and argument about like whether that 1 loss team deserved to be in there over Alabama or not, I mean, there's a potential for like a lot of discussion and argument over like how that playoff bracket plays out. But I think the potential for kind of giving a shot or a chance to, like a number 10, 11, 12 ranked team, to kind of make a deep run in the playoffs, even though they're like, statistics are, the odds are against them and everything. I think it still makes for just really exciting playoff football. So, all right, that's pretty much everything that I had for this week on the sports page. I appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out. Don't forget to check us out on all social media platforms at Peak One Sports. Like us, follow, subscribe, so you can always stay up to date on some of your favorite sports news. Don't forget to check out the Leadoff on Saturday mornings. I do the Gambler on Saturday evenings. Ross does the Roscoe Fantasy Football Show on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Obviously, the sports page every Wednesday at 8 p.m. And then our top show on Peak One is actually our Friday Night Football Show, starring yours truly and Ross Bates, covering some of the local high school football games here. This Friday, we'll be covering Chisholm Trail. It'll be our first game covering Chisholm Trail this season. They're also doing kind of a first responder night, so they're honoring the local Leos and first responders in the area. So going to be a really exciting, fun night. Chisholm Trail is also 2-0. Number of the teams that we're covering this season are actually having some good seasons so far. It's been really exciting, and we're really excited to be a part of it. So shout out to the Eagle Mountain ISD for letting us cover them and do these games and everything. And feel free to check us out. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We appreciate you guys. Love everybody that came in and managed to hang out. Even if you were here for just a moment, we appreciate you. And we will catch you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.